We start the meeting or?
I'll read as we start.
Okay. We'll bring the July 27th, 2026 Montpelier Planning Commission meeting to order. First is the approval of the agenda. If anybody has any changes or suggestions, please let me know. Otherwise, I'd ask for unanimous consent to approve the agenda.
And we'll need to introduce you.
Oh, thank you, Mike. I always forget that. Before we do that, we have two planning commissioners online. If you two could quickly identify yourself.
Sean Linehan, Planning Commissioner.
Rowan Hawthorne, Planning Commissioner.
All right, thank you.
And do we need to add Mike's land use letter? Does that fit into the agenda as it is currently written? Or is that?
That part of number 6.
Yeah, that's part of 6, I think.
Or at least it intended to be part of number 6.
Sorry, I don't have the agenda up in front of me.
Oh, okay. I think it's covered under the existing agenda.
All right, let's approve the agenda.
Great. Hearing nothing, the agenda is passed as approved. Next is consideration of the July 13th, 2026 meeting minutes. Mike, do you want to say something about these two versions that we have in front of us?
Yes. So knowing that our minute taker is retiring, we have decided to look at going to an AI minute taker and having, so Nick has been looking at a couple of different options. Some of them are different programs and some of them are just different settings within the same program. In this case, these are two different programs. The one on the right is kind of more closely matches what we typically do for our minutes. Or I should say the shorter version is the ones that we usually do. But there is also a longer version, which includes more detail, pluses and minuses to each. And of course, all of our meetings are recorded. So some of the concerns may be a little bit more moot. In the past, people have said it's nicer to have the shorter minutes because it gives you more of a freedom to be able to have conversations about things. You don't want recorded in the minutes fact that you didn't understand something and needed clarification on something, and maybe that, you'd rather not have the minutes reflecting those. It's really entirely up to the commission as to what degree of detail you would like in your minutes. So
Discuss. Sure.
I'm strongly in favor of the shorter version personally. I oftentimes do go back to the recordings. It's nice to have those. Orca Media provides them on their YouTube channel. So I think short as a good synopsis and reminder of what happened is best personally. And then I had one concern just overall with AI note taking. I think that names are going to be the hardest. And for instance, on the last page of the longer one, it says Sandy Vitsu, which is a last name. It's not her last name. Sorry, Sandy Fitzhugh. And what?
And Tim Healy.
Yeah. So that's going to probably be an issue across the board that will have to have some sort of a human touch to it.
yes.
So that, are you losing, who is doing this work for you before?
This was a woman named Tammy Fury, and she was just somebody who does transcriptions on the side, sometimes for courts, sometimes for hearings, other bodies. So that's kind of what she did as a side job. Listen to these things and type out minutes. But
losing that capability altogether? She retired?
yeah, she's retiring, and we posted these before to hire somebody. This will come at the same cost as hiring her. In fact, it would be cheaper because with a monthly subscription, we get a certain number of meetings. So what we were paying her for DRB, DRC, and Planning Commission, we could use that amount of money to pay for an AI service that would be able to then be used on other committees and commissions as well.
I also say short because there's gonna be editing, right? And if you go long, it goes long. Editing, who's gonna do that on your side?
Yeah, I mean, some of these are, it will do, it's supposed to do a pretty good job being able to pick people out. So, if you introduce yourself and make sure people introduce themselves, and again, I guess as clearly as we can introduce ourselves at the start, the AI will start to recognize your voice. And therefore, when you speak later, it will recognize, oh, that was Gabe, and ascribe that to Gabe, and or ascribe that to Mike, because it's going to recognize your voice. So I think that's a little creepy in some ways to some people, but it is also how these systems work. But yes, we will have to go through and proof them. Nobody is expecting us to have minutes that won't be approved and reviewed by a human. But without any editing, this is what the AI churned out. I thought it was pretty good with a few edits. In either case, I thought they were both pretty good minutes.
You know, it's possible to get either of the tools to put like a stamp. If people wanted to. We never did that before. Since it's AI, but you will do that.
I can ask.
I also like the shorter version better. I think if someone wants this level of detail, they could see this and then go to the reporting.
Yep.
But I feel like there's also room for, and it's so in depth that people could be taken out of context, or it could not get at the gist of what someone has said. This is really a lot of detail.
Yeah, I think we would have to read into them a little bit more to make sure that they were meeting what they were intending to say. Although I seem to
Yeah.
find they're doing a fairly good job, but again, over time, it may or may not.
No, it does do a good job. It's surprising.
Yeah.
But I could see a situation where, someone on the commission disagrees with how it's presented.
All right, so the preference would be to go with the shorter one. I mean, unless we want to vote on that.
Yeah, I think just to button it up, if somebody has a motion in terms of which one we would want to go forward with, happy to entertain that.
I'll make a motion to move forward with the AI minutes that are the shorter version rather than the longer version.
I'll second that.
Great. Is there any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor of adopting the shorter of the two versions that we have in front of us, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed?
I'll go the next.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
I
sorry.
think it's, oh, sorry.
It's just prevalent.
No, I think, but, no, never mind. I'm gonna
It's okay.
stay quiet.
Any abstentions?
Do we want to check what Helen's comment is?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Alan, do you have something you'd like to say?
Sure. Good evening. I hope you all had a good summer weekend, and thanks for coming out tonight. Yeah, I was just going to ask about the transcription program built into Zoom and what you folks think of it. And do you feel that you get a good result? Because it is one of the things we can do on Zoom, and it allows us to actually OCR, go through it and review it quickly. I just didn't know if that was something you folks had considered.
A transcription would make for a longer meeting, a longer set of minutes. So the minutes are really meant to be a summary of them. You can use that feature separately if people want to search for certain things or do that level of detail. But for minutes, I don't think they need to be the full transcription.
I fully agree. I was just going to say, with the transcription, you can have AI then make it into a very short form of minutes.
Yeah, and I think that's what Nick
That
was
my
looking at.
suggestion.
Yeah, Nick was looking at all the programs that were easily and cheaply available. There actually aren't as many as you might think that are really designed for doing minutes. And the one that you've chosen as the commission has chosen as the preferred is actually somebody who worked in local government and then created a program to do the minutes because they didn't like doing minutes. And so it's actually a program that's designed. That's why we don't have to put in any of the information of the agenda. We just feed the agenda in and it automatically populates it. So
Seeing that we had a unanimous vote in favor of adopting the shorter of the two, taking a look at that version of the minutes, are there any edits, changes that need to be made? I know, Tim, you pointed out a couple. There's a misspelling of Sandy Vitsium's name on the last page, also Tim Heaney's name.
That was the longer version.
Oh, that was the longer version. I'm sorry. I'm looking at
But
that.
Tim's name is incorrect on the
in
shorter
the
version.
shorter version.
yeah, I was gonna say, that was the only one I found was to Tim Heaney.
Okay.
And I think Nick had gone through to add, because Sandy Vitsium's name is spelled correctly in the public who attended the meeting. And I doubt an AI would have been able to figure that out.
Yeah.
So he must have corrected that. But Tim wasn't in attendance. You just referred to him, and that's why
I did refer to him.
Okay, because yeah, I didn't remember Tim being at the meetings.
Right.
So we do have one small edit on the minutes. So take a motion on approving the minutes. Anyone?
I can make a motion to approve the shorter AI version of the meeting minutes with the edit to Tim Heaney's name in item 8A.
I'll second.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Mike, number 7. Oh, I was on Zoom for this meeting and sick, so maybe I misunderstood, but I thought the staff letter was going to express more support for Chinburg than DEW. I thought that was what you had said in the meeting.
Well, at this meeting, previously we had that conversation. At this meeting, what we had expressed was that we were going to be supporting DEW, but noting a few areas where we felt we could do more in negotiations. And we didn't end up submitting that memo. We're going to hold that one until we start getting to negotiations and then presenting that to
This is accurate.
council. Yes.
Yep. Okay. So
Okay, guys.
we've got a motion from Leah, second by Tim. Any discussion or additional changes anybody sees on the minutes? No. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? The minutes are approved. All right, great. Hopefully going forward, it'll be it'll be a much shorter conversation. I'm looking forward to our bold AI future. Next is general business. This is comments from the public about something that's not on the agenda. We have someone here in the room. We also have some folks online. So if anybody would like to raise any issues or concerns about things that are not on the agenda, please do so now.
It's related, of course, to stuff that's on the agenda, so. I've raised a version of this concern with this commission for a year or so now. Tonight, it stops being a warning and starts being a fact on the record. Vermont law requires a municipal land use plan to do 2 things before it can send land forward for Tier 1A or Tier 1B status. 24 VSA 4832 paren little a paren 2 paren big C. Added by Act 181 says the plan must identify the areas proposed for designation under 10 VSA 6033 and 34, which is Tier 1A and 1B. And for each one, explain how the designation furthers the plan's own goals and the state goals in Section 4302, and how the area meets the requirements for the tier being sought. City Plan 2025 does neither. I filed that exact question this exact question with the land use review board again this morning. In writing on the docket, reviewing CVRPC's regional plans, so nobody in the room can say later they didn't know it was live. This isn't new territory for Montpelier. In October 2024, the state board revoked Country Club Road's growth center designation for the same underlying failure. The city's own plan never identified the land as a growth area, and the board found staff had produced no capital programming identifying the investments needed to implement it. The commission was here for that finding. It cost the city 18 months of work, undone after the fact once the state looked closely. That history should shape what you send to this regional planning commission tonight, not just whether you send anything at all. Once the commission's plan is adopted, 4348 M makes it unappealable. If a parcel gets folded into a planned growth area and shouldn't have been, that's effectively permanent. No second look for anyone. The reverse isn't true. Section 4348 J lets the city request minor boundary amendments, anything under 10 acres, without reopening the whole plan. Section 4348 N allows amendment whenever conditions change. The legislature built in an on-ramp for growth areas to expand later once the municipality could actually show the infrastructure and the justification are there. It built no off-ramp for a map drawn too large now. Mike, you already described sorting tonight's request into easy fixes, areas that clearly meet the criteria, and more contested expansions requiring stronger justification. I asked the commission to treat that line as the actual boundary of what goes to the Regional Planning Commission tonight, not just a sorting exercise. Send the areas you can defend without hedging: Berlin Street, Northfield Street, Mountain View Drive, the ones with sidewalk, sewer, and zoning already in place and no real dispute. Leave the contested parcels out of this round. I'd also note that the methodology behind tonight's map, sidewalk, sewer lines, zoning districts, tell you where infrastructure exists. It doesn't tell you whether City Plan 2025 contains the identification and explanation that 4382 A, 2 large C requires for any of those areas. Those are two different questions, and only one of them has been answered so far. Bring the contested parcels forward one at a time through the 4348 J process as each earns its own justification, instead of asking the state to take all of them on faith at once off a plan that doesn't yet contain the explanations the statute requires for any of them. A small defensible map now costs the city nothing later. It can only grow. A large undefended map now costs everything if even one piece doesn't hold up. And the commission has already watched that happen. So two things on the record. Has anyone confirmed that City Plan 2025 4382 A2C for the areas satisfies that section for areas in the recommendation? And if not, is the commission willing to scale tonight's request down to what it can actually defend and use the incremental process for the rest?
Thanks, Steve.
Is there anybody online that has anything? Looks like we don't. Okay. Next is comments from the commission. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say, bring up? I think you might, Tim.
Yeah, Mike and I were at the Land Use Review Board meeting with CVRPC on Thursday afternoon. It was a long meeting. Went from 1:30 to, I don't know, 4, just after 4. Steve was there too and had a ton of questions for both CVRPC and the Land Use Review Board. It was excellent. Christian Meyer and Brian Voigt were there giving a similar presentation as they gave to us some time ago. Notably, though, they were discussing the entire region. Brian did an excellent job presenting for over an hour, talking about very specific locations. The Land Use Review Board folks that were there was 3 board members, and they were open to a lot of questions, asked a lot of questions themselves. I would say that my sort of editorial on it, 2 of the board members seemed very strict with statutes, and one board member seemed a little bit more open. I say that in the sense that like she truly understands deeply that Vermont has a housing crisis, that Montpelier has a housing crisis, and that the work that we're doing here in Montpelier is essential. But all three of them took all comments very seriously. Mike made excellent comments about, which I think we'll talk about tonight, about the future land use map. I think I'll leave it at that. It was a really good meeting. It was great to see the Land Use Review Board in action with CVRPC. At the end of the day, I think this is going to be a negotiation. You know, we have a lot of fantastic ideas. The Housing Committee is very energized in this space. They have fantastic ideas. At the end of the day, I think it'll be a negotiation that we'll all have to work through. Last thing I wanted to say is that, you know, Steve has mentioned several times the idea of an over designation and being careful of an over designation in Montpelier, because once something is designated as future growth, it can't be crawled back, I think is the phrase used. I mentioned to the Land Use Review Board, as Steve mentioned his opinion, I mentioned to them that my opinion is that we are sorely under designated in Montpelier. And that if we're looking at a future land use in Montpelier for the next 20, 50, 100 years, that we are highly under designated. So again, I think it's going to be a matter of opinion, and even though there are clearly facts on the ground, we're looking at the future, and I look forward to the continued conversation tonight.
Thanks, Tim. Mike, you have anything to add to that? You were there?
I'll probably end up going over most of my comments when we get to number 6.
Okay.
I'll probably gonna save my thoughts on there. I mean, I guess I'll correct one point that Steve made, which was the reason our growth center was revoked was because the process the state used did not meet statute. All the other pieces had been deemed as meeting the requirements, and they were going to issue our growth center approval with the condition that, because they knew we were going to be adding Country Club Road to that, they were going to be approving our growth center expansion on condition that we make the change, or it would go into effect once we had made the change. But what was pointed out was that the state's process, the process requirement is that you have to go back and put in a full application. And what the state had been historically doing and had done in this case was to do an abbreviated process, which said, talk about all the changes between your original application and what the addition would be, as opposed to redeveloping a full application. So their legal advice from the attorney was that the city would have to go back and submit a full application in order to meet that requirement. And so that's why it was withdrawn, not because of anything we had done, but because of the failure at the state level for having an application that met the statutory requirements. So I just wanted to make sure that was clarified. But yes, it did put a delay in there, and eventually we ended up with a better process anyways. So I'll take the tier 1A over the growth center.
Mr. Chair, if I'm going to be corrected, I'd like to recorrect the correction.
Sure, that's fine. Just make it brief.
Yeah, it's brief. It's not that we were required to do an application. It's that the planning just hadn't been done, and the planning still hasn't been done. If you read the growth center planning requirements, they in effect amount to a master plan and a capital plan. And that's still what's lacking, and it's still what's going to keep Country Club Road out of tier 1A. So this
But
false
that is not the
assurance-
reason it was denied.
It is the reason it was denied. The fact that we didn't read the statute first and decide we're going to comply with the law and do the required planning first is the reason. It's not that they had gotten lax with their interpretation of the law, but when it was pointed out to them, it was very clear that we didn't meet the law, and we still don't meet the law. So, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Are there any other comments from any other commissioners about any other issues? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 6, which is a good dovetail to continue this conversation. The commission recommendation to the CVRPC for the regional plan future land use areas map. Hand it over to you, Mike.
All right, so I guess the first thing I will kind of mention at the start is that at the meeting, they went through and pointed out that they will be accepting written comments until August 7th. So we do have a little bit of time, but we will not have, as a commission, another meeting. So kind of thinking with the end in mind, we may not want to approve what I put together as a memo, but you may want to consider having somebody work with me to make amendments to this, especially if you want to add a number of areas or make a number of changes, that we have the conversation about what it would be. I could work with somebody on developing it, whether it's Tim or somebody else, because I know Tim has invested a bunch of time in this, that we could work to get something in by the August 7th deadline. So just giving you a little bit. What I was finally able to get through today, trying to make some time, cut out some time, was to put together a quick map. And really the only thing that's on that map are just numbers. So the map, and I can put the map up so we can talk about it. And nothing in here is new. I think we've all mentioned this, but I kind of tried to lay out a few facts and justifications. And we may, if we have a little bit more time, I may work with Nick when he gets back from vacation next week to kind of fill in a few more of the technical points on out of the methodology, exactly why. We want to really tie this back to the methodology so we can go back to their rules and say, you said X, which is why we think this should be included. It's a little bit clunky sometimes how I laid it out, because really I was just trying to hit the bullet points of what's required and why this would meet the folks. So I think what I might do is start by sharing the map. And really this will be a little bit for more people online or at home. So I laid this out in a couple of things. First was to identify errors, identify areas to include in downtown center, areas to include in planned growth area, areas to include in transition or infill, and then other requests. And so I think we could add others or remove some of these if you don't think they're appropriate. But I'll quickly run through the 12 that I have that I identified. Number one is an error, and I did talk to Brian Boyd at the RPC, and he agrees it is an error on Sabin's pasture. And let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. And so let me move too. Look at that. So we've got Sabin's pasture and we have a floodplain. Now, the floodplain is mapped as rural conservation on the Sabin's pasture property on Berry Street, despite being in an existing growth center. By statute, the floodplain should not be included as rural conservation. So that should be just planned growth area, because anything that's in the planned growth or anything that's in the, I guess they call it the legacy growth center, the floodplains are not included, which is why you don't see any floodplains through our downtown. But they then appear, the big green area to the west, because that area was not in our plan. That was not in our growth center. So that's why you'll see these green areas that start to appear as you get outside of the downtown. Those are generally, when you see them, they're either wetlands or floodplains. So number one, that should not be there. That's an error. They have acknowledged it's an error, but they can't make any changes until after. So once the preliminary map is in, they can't fix it. Let's see. So number two, and this is in areas to include as downtown center. You'll see over here to the west, number two, the Redstone building and adjacent parcels on Terrace Street should be considered downtown center. These areas are in the city's design review and National Register of historic places districts. They're generally considered to be part of the downtown core. I've also noted, or I noticed when I was flipping through the downtown that usually they do consider that you should follow the National Historic District boundaries when you are creating these districts. For the downtown center should follow the National Register district boundary. And it does, except for these 3 parcels. So we would argue these 3 parcels over here was maybe 4 parcels that are over here, Terrace Street out to the Redstone property.
I agree with that. I would also tack on, and maybe this is intended, but I would also tack on those few Baldwin properties that get you over to Bailey and Terrace. It's kind of to the right of the period of next to number 2.
Yeah, I've got these 3 here. Yes,
Oh,
and that's what I
that's
was
already-
when I was referring to the Terrace Street ones. That's what I was referring to.
Okay.
These ones
Yeah.
where the dot is in one of them, and then there's looks like 1, 2, 3 additional parcels.
That makes sense.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
a down street property.
There's a down street property on the north side,
This
and then it's
There.
NRDC. Is it NRDC on the south side?
I was trying to
Right at the
remember
corner.
which
yeah, I don't know who is in that building, but that's the building.
the NRC.
That's the parcel you're talking about.
Yes,
Okay.
going over to Redstone.
Yeah, if you were to kind of go up to Terrace Street, you'd kind of go up and make the left, and it's the building on the corner plus one more. Plus, there's actually another one that fronts on that other building. So I think those all should all be in there in the downtown center. I didn't see anything else that they missed, so I thought that was a good one there. Looking at the planned growth areas, this is obviously where we have our most comments. And we'll get a better map when we've made the final decision. I'll have Nick make up a nice map when he gets back. This is Mountain View Drive, or Mountain View Street, Mountain View Drive, to check that one. They have it as rural general, and there's a bike path, there's transit routes, there's a lot up there that's got water and sewer, all of which, including the fact, and you'll see this show up a lot, it is zoned residential 9,000, therefore could have 4 lots per acre and up to 24 dwelling units per acre.
Which parcel is it?
It's a set of parcels. It's the yellow ones that you.
Oh,
see
yellow
here.
one. Yep, got it.
Yep. And yellow is rural general, and I can't see anything in Montpelier not on sewer and water. I mean, maybe if you're in the rural,
Yeah, that
could be
makes sense.
rural general, but if you're on sewer and water, nothing should be rural general, in my opinion. So that was number 3. Number 4, we talked about this. Independence Green has continuous sidewalks to downtown. Is on the Northfield bus route. Has water and sewer. Is zone 9,000. This is no brainer. And similarly, on 5, Berlin Street and Sherwood Drive, and actually should, no, it would not. 4 would not abut. Berlin Street, sidewalks lead up to Hebert, then extend down Hebert. The city growth center ends at Hebert as well. So this is where the growth center ends. So these parcels literally abut the growth center. The upper section of Berlin Street has access to Hospital Hill bus routes, which runs multiple trips per hour. Sherwood Drive is within the half-mile Act 250 exempt area. I say that because that's one of the criteria for being included. All have water and sewer access and are zoned residential 9,000, therefore could have the 4 lots, blah, blah, blah. So that was 5. Number 6 is the chunk that's missing on Country Club Road. I think that there's a policy in their document that says parcels, these designations should follow parcel boundaries where to the greatest extent feasible or something to that. I'll have to find the exact language, but that should also be included, because it doesn't matter the fact that it isn't planned to be developed or isn't, even if it was undevelopable, there is actually language that says it's okay to be in a planned growth area if it's undevelopable. In this case, it actually is developable. We just aren't intending on developing it. Number 7 is our discussion we had on Woodcrest. So has water, I believe water and sewer. I've got to double check that with them. I know it has sewer. The question is whether it's water and sewer. I know we have a water tower over here, and I don't know if that's enough to provide the pressure over there. But it at least has sewer, certainly has the sidewalks out that far. Should be eligible based on its zoning. I think in our future land use map that we adopted with the city, we also included these 2 parcels up here at the boundary, but based on the wetlands and how big the wetlands are, those really would not be developable. So I would probably recommend keeping it tucked into these parcels that are going up to Murray, but not the last 2. Number 8. Number 8. Oh, number 8 takes us all the way over to Crestview area. No. 8 is
Elm Street.
Elm Street. Yes. So Elm Street, city recognizes that the rules require river corridor to be included as rural conservation, but the areas closest to the road contain a thin area where development can be allowed. The city has had proposals in the strip and believe it should be planned growth area like the land across the street. It has sidewalks, water, sewer, and abuts the growth center at Cumming Street. It's zoned residential 9,000 and therefore could have blah, 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 the 24 units. So,
Yeah, I mean, there are currently structures on every single one of those properties.
yep. Sometimes a river
and-
corridor line runs through the building, but not in every case. In some cases, their buildings are in front of them. And in some cases, you still have land in front. So you might have an existing house. Most of these houses are set back from the road. You could build another building in front of it and meet the setbacks.
Yeah, and there's currently multi-housing units that are being built there.
Yes.
I'd like to say one thing, which is the these flood hazard areas. Is that what they're? No, river corridor.
The river corridor, yes.
They are not exactly to elevations. So
No.
in terms of, so it's just should be just taken as river corridor, not necessarily all of these areas within that green along the river are flooding.
Correct. So the river corridor is meant to provide a meander belt for the river to move over time. So that way it can move over and it accumulates and deposits material as it moves across the landscape, and it finds its balance. I find the rules they have are fairly defined. If there was a set of ledge, it would stop at the ledge. So they look for certain features that they could go through and say, well, it would stop here, it would increase there. I've personally, as a certified floodplain manager, looking at this, the dam that is above us provides a lot of attenuation of the amount of flow that can come through. I think this is an over protection for this particular stretch. It's not true for other places, but this river has not moved far. I don't expect it to move far. I mean, I did some work at the city's pool and the park, and looking after all the floods that we've had, the river has moved very short distances, and it's not because of armoring. It's not because of other things. Mostly because it's not getting enough speed that you would get. They're looking at this from a map that goes through and says, this river at this size, this location, with this much headwaters above it would expect this amount of movement, and it simply doesn't move. I think that is because the dam just simply doesn't give us enough water. But that being said, it doesn't matter. From the regulation standpoint, this is the state's map for that layer. And I think until such time as it gets remapped, that will be the condition. But if we remap the layer under it as planned growth area and the river corridor gets adjusted in the future, it would be adjusting to give us more river corridor or more planned growth area. And I think that would be the appropriate way to go. So yeah, thank you, Tim. Number 9, this is where we get over to the Crestview side. So this was number 9. The recommendation is the bony pasture, in quotes, is an area identified on the the city's future land use map as planned growth area. Because it is an area where utilities could be extended and connected through to Crestview, see number 10. It provides an opportunity for future growth and could provide a second access to any future development that could occur at the adjoining parcel. Both properties are owned by the same person. So we do have in our future land use map, this is there, the state one. It follows the bony pastures. There's kind of a weavy line that kind of goes over and connects to the parcel line. So I made that one request is the bony pasture. We have a map for that, which we would insert with this document. Probably, I would probably take a snapshot of it out of our future land use map that we have in our city plan. And then 10 is to add in the remainder of Crestview. The remainder of Crestview is in the city's future land use map as planned growth area because the methodology encourages following property lines. The existing line is the current growth center. So this is the current growth center line and covers a majority of the property. This is currently also connects to the bony pasture. So again, we would need the bony pasture. We need to add this in to add in the connection to the bony pasture, which would allow connection between these two development areas. And I think Alan has his hand up.
Alan.
Thank you. And you're doing a great job, guys. Thank you. I just wanted to point out on the number 10, that is the original boundary line from an Act 250 permit that was blessed. And so we've always designed within that area. And that's why Crestview is going into that area. And so, yes, that would be very important to put that back in because it cuts right through the project that was approved back in '92. And thank you.
Okay. So those are the 8 additional changes that I put in that I think looking at the rules are the easiest, most straightforward ones to put in. I also wanted to go through and make a few other changes because I thought a couple others were also not designated, although it won't make a difference for Tier 1A. Number 11, Toy Town. We designated in our city plan, Toy Town would be transition or infill is what the name of the district is. Toy Town's a small neighborhood disconnected from the downtown, which is one of the reasons why it can't be included. This area has access to sewer and water, bike path, 4 lots up to 24. It is disqualified from being a part of the planned growth area because it does not have sidewalks or transit, but these areas are eligible for transition or infill and should be designated as such. So I would rather see 11 and, which I think we talked about last time, and Gallison Hill at the other extreme, the eastern extreme. Gallison Hill similarly just doesn't have the basic components to meet it, but that doesn't make Gallison Hill rural. That makes Gallison Hill transition. And that gives us, in the future, it is one we could look back and go and make a comment on adding that one in if it meets the requirement going forward. And then under other requested changes, I'll just read the paragraph I put in here. The city would like to support the CVRPC suggestion that a new designation may be appropriate on a limited basis to support resilient infill. The city of Montpelier is acutely aware of the risk that flooding can have on our individual residents as well as the broader economy and environment. We also learned a great deal by looking at undamaged buildings following the July 2023 flood. At least 7 buildings in our downtown did not suffer damage, and each of them had the same thing in common. They were all built after 1973 when flood regulations were first adopted by the city. The city's newest rules are more robust than those adopted 50 years ago and protect against much larger events. We point this out because many areas adjacent to our downtown that are currently developed will be designated as future rural conservation. while we support conserving existing open space in our flood hazard areas, designated the Department of Labor, Montpelier High School, Wind River Environmental, a brownfield that is in the river corridor, portions of Galveston Hill Industrial Park, and other already developed areas as rural conservation does not make sense. No one would adopt a plan that says we think we will be working towards conserving these areas. We would expect them to be built or rebuilt to flood codes and be properly elevated. We ask the LURB to consider this potential change that other regions of the state could also use in select areas. So really that's to try to address, we're already on the eastern side, you know, kind of these big green areas. Now this area is conserved. That's our home farm way, but the building next to it is above the floodplain, but in the river corridor. That is the old armory building, it's Connor's building, the old Social Security building. People sometimes called it the old Cabot building if you've been here long enough. And same with some of these other properties out here. Again, Galveston Hill, you see a big green swath through a chunk of the area that is currently the industrial park. So you're just like, they're just pieces that don't make sense. This is Wind River. You would expect Wind River to be part of the enterprise. That's the word I'm missing. The enterprise zone, not rural conservation. It may be in the floodway or the river corridor. It's not in the floodway, it's in the river corridor, but nobody's going to let that river corridor actually meander through a coal tar brownfield. It's always going to be defended. So I think there are just a number of things. And we had this discussion at the last meeting about it's a small impact on us that we get these areas down here stuck into our sewage treatment plant is in the is in rural conservation. All these properties, we have a small impact. I think this is a bigger impact on Berry City, where the entire north end is all designated rural conservation. And the logic doesn't make sense. We're not going to take the whole north of Berry and turn it back into farm fields or floodplains. People are going to rebuild there. They're just going to rebuild there in a resilient way. Those buildings can't stay there, but we can rebuild that area and elevate those buildings, have parking underneath, and redevelop it, or at least that's my opinion. So I put these together just as my first shot. You guys can go through and add, remove, expand. I just wanted to get something so we'd have something to respond to. I guess the other thing I'll comment, they got pushback from the LURB on the capital, which here is designated as other. I actually agree that this should be other. And
What does the LURB?
Yeah, what exactly? What is
they wanted things to be matched to what's around. And what the RPC did was they made other like the interstate. And they said, we'll just make the interstate match whatever's around it or make it rural. They said everyone else in the state could manage how to do it. And so should CVRPC. The rail lines are white. Anywhere you see white is an area that's designated as other, and the LURB didn't like the others. But the one they also didn't like was the fact that the State House. But the State House is unique. We can't regulate it. Even the Capitol Complex Commission cannot regulate what happens at the State House. The State House is Vermont's only national landmark, and it is owned and managed by the legislature itself. So it really is kind of its own thing. For us to give it any zoning designation is kind of meaningless. I think it makes more sense to do it the way they did. And I'll talk to Christian and their folks about putting together a reply to that, because it is, for people who don't know how this operates, it is a very unique, because even the Capitol Complex Commission can't say, we don't want to see that. So you make a change to something. They can, with a change of state law. But the other thing is they also need to change state law in order to actually make a change. So they can't simply have BGS go in and say, we're going to go through and make a change or make an improvement, they have to go back through the legislature to get that done. So
I agree with all of that. I do think that it is unique, a singular unique parcel in the state of Vermont. If the LURB really wanted it to be anything, I personally would designate it as downtown center, as the rest of our state parcels and buildings are designated. But yeah, I agree that other is best.
and it looks like Alan has a quick comment as well, another comment.
Go ahead, Alan.
Thank you. I think you folks are doing a great job, and thank you, the housing people, and thank you, Mike, for suggesting all these things. I hope you folks will really take it into consideration. I am a little confused, Mike. Something like the Redstone, which is on the National Historic Register and was always in the downtown. How did it actually come out? Or why would, is that just an error like over on Sabins, or is that something they really did with a plan?
I don't know why it ended up the way it was. I know there was at one point a change in the National Register boundary between like 2007 and 2016. There was a change, but I always thought Redstone was in the national, not only as an individual, but I thought it was in the district as well the whole time. So I'm not sure if they were looking at a different set of thoughts, but that's where it ended up. And so I couldn't really call it an error. I had a couple of these where I looked at it, I was like, is that an error or is that just a requested change? Number one was clearly an error. That should not be there. But number two, yeah, we could make an argument it's an error, but I think if we make the argument the way we did here, that they'll add it in and just say, yeah, that should be in the downtown center.
Thank you. And again, it is on the National Historic Register. I can't do anything without getting a blessing from the state.
Yeah.
And I can see my neighbor on Baldwin. She's in there. And you may consider the one with the dot next to it too. I'm not really sure. But thank you. Thank you, folks.
So thank you, Mike. I mean, questions?
Will there be a map that you would also send with the whatever memo is finalized so that they can see what we're talking about?
Yes, we'll have that, and I'll also add in, like I said, like a couple of places where we want to reference, like this is in the future, like the Boney pasture area. I'll probably cut out and insert that into the written document.
Yeah, thanks for the hard work. I support all of it, but I know Tim did a lot of work, so I don't know what's missing from this.
Yeah, I think this is really excellent, Mike, and I appreciate it. Like I said in the beginning, of course, this is going to be a negotiation across the board from the planning department, housing committee, planning commission, CVRPC, land use review board. There's a lot of people who are paying attention to this. I really appreciate the focus on expansion. As I said earlier, I think the under designation of planned growth areas historically in Montpelier has been a major issue of mine. I think this really addresses a lot of our concerns. So I'm going to leave it at that. I think this is really excellent. I don't have any additions or parcels to take away. I will say one thing, because that Sandy and Tim and I were discussing, the handful of parcels that are to the north of Country Club Road are on the same slope as Country Club Road, and could potentially, even though they're not on the same street or potential future streets, could potentially tie into sewer and water.
Is this the parcels that are marked 6 or?
No, they're just to the north of the pink Country Club Road area.
Off Hackamore there.
Off Hackamore, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I think this would go to those points that Steve brought up about potential expansions in the future. I think those are areas that our current sewer policy, I think, is like if you're within 300 feet, we can extend and those types of things. I think once give us a couple of years and we've got that road up top, and people have the opportunity to connect, then we can start having a conversation of, is this, do they want to have that? 'Cause that would be, running a lot.
That sounds like
For the cost of, just so people know from a planning standpoint, we usually talk about 8 to 12 dwelling units an acre in order to pay for enough services to support its utilities. So when you run a long sewer line, you've got nothing, nobody's paying for that sewer line except for everybody else on the system to hook up a number of houses. So you have to be able to run a sewer line and support 8, sometimes, it depends on the value of the property.
Yeah.
I mean, you could get away with 4 units an acre if you were in Stowe building big expensive houses. But if you're building modest houses, the ballpark back of the envelope number is usually around 8 units an acre. And so that's usually what we would give us a little rule of thumb to think about as if we're going to have more development down here and then start to connect our way up, or if these are planning to have a lot of infill, but to run that far for 8 houses probably wouldn't make a lot. The Sabins pasture run, though, that comes up, when they build up to the top of theirs, if they connect up to, I can't remember the name of that. Spring Hollow, they would, that area has water, but they do not have septic. So they could look at a lot of infill in that area if there was a sewer connection that went up to those. Doesn't necessarily mean a road connection up to there, but if we were to extend the sewer up into there, you'd have a number of customers. Now the question would be, how many people do we have? And how many additional units would we add if we had sewer? And would that bring us to that 8 to 12, unit where we know, now we're getting the densities to support the sewer pipe in the ground.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I would have been doing a disservice if I didn't at least mention it to the housing committee folks that I was able to work with.
Yeah, and I do know, I did recognize there were others, Tim, Tim and Sandy and others had looked at a much bigger map, and I figured I would start with a smaller map. This is what is right there. If the planning commission wanted to go big and push that out, it would certainly be something that, this is your memo. I addressed this to the Vermont Land Use Review Board, CVRPC, from the Montpelier Planning Commission. So it's your memo. I just put some words to the paper.
I think you made an excellent point at one of our recent, it might have been the last meeting where it would be great to have sort of a consensus across the board from Planning Department, Planning Commission, and Housing Committee. I agree with that completely, and I'm personally happy with the map going forward with the edits suggested.
Yeah, Mike, I have a quick question. Based on what Alan said about the Boney pasture and how the development line was already kind of in compliance with an old Act 250 map, is that some type of extra argument we could include in here? Like, is that persuasive and good to bring up, or is that not really relevant to the point that you're trying to make?
I'll look at the methodology because I think it probably would make sense to add that in. I mean, I would have to go back and do the homework to confirm, that's the parcel line that you see, this faint line here is the line that was used in the Act 250 application. Then it would make sense that area would be in if it's already included, as a part of an Act 250. This area in pink is already in because it's the growth center. This is area adjacent to the growth center. So the methodology says the planned growth area includes the growth center and areas adjacent to it, which are expected, and if there's already an Act 250 or was an Act 250 that showed pieces or a portion of this was a part of that project, then it would just add to the case.
Yes, yeah, exactly. What you have is great. And if it does add, put it in there. And if it doesn't, then we shouldn't.
Yeah, Mike, I think you've laid out everything very clearly. Very nicely. I just think it's great. You did a great job.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'm trying to figure out these are more sort of process oriented questions. So my recollection from the last meeting was the goal was to have, I'll call them an omnibus set of comments from Housing Subcommittee, Planning Commission, city staff. Is this intended to be those omnibus comments on behalf of this sort of city writ large as those omnibus comments, and if that's the case, I'd like to make sure that sort of all the stakeholders that have been involved in this, like specifically Tim and the folks that he's been dealing with on the housing subcommittee, have a chance to look at this, and if we can fashion some sort of process to make sure that we can run these comments by them, there's some very short truncated process for them to weigh in. I'm just trying to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, they're meeting on the 4th, and maybe we can, I know Seamus is here as well. He might have some insight. They're meeting on the 4th, but that wouldn't give us an opportunity. If the housing committee came in and said, we want you to add these areas in, I wouldn't have time to come back and ask you,
Right.
what do you think of the housing committee's recommendation to add more in?
Right.
I will
And
say that
think Tim has probably worked the most with the
Yeah, I
stuff
was gonna
committee.
say.
after our most recent connection, they were very happy to turn this process over to the planning commission and have us run with it, where I think it would be excellent to point to, let them know what we discussed tonight and the approach that we're taking. They're very happy for it to be our process at this point.
Okay. And I'll just, not to put you on the spot, but given
Seamus gave us the thumbs up.
given your want to be to over designate,
Yeah.
we'll call it. I'm just trying to, how much of that is just you versus that's you also sort of incorporating your understanding of what the housing subcommittee is sort of leaning towards? And if it is the latter of the two, does this memo capture generally what you understand the housing subcommittee to want, or
Yeah,
is there some room here to be more expansive, and if so, where would that be?
that's a good.
That's a lot I just put on.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good question. I will say that it was shared alignment between me and Sandy and Tim for Housing Committee Subcommittee. And that said, they did sort of shift the process over to us and Planning Department. I know they still have strong opinions about expansion. At the same time, I would argue that all of the reasoning and data that Mike has brought forth here is excellent. And so I don't think, the 3 parcels that I mentioned above the Country Club Road is a perfect example. And Mike has a good response to that, and that can be featured down the line. I think that we would be very successful with numbers 1 through 10 here, going through and being part of the suggestion to the CVRPC.
Okay. And just to follow up to kind of tie it up, is there, based on your work with the housing subcommittee, as you sit and look at this map here, is there anything additionally that you might suggest that we take a look at in terms of doing more with or expanding?
No, not currently. I can nitpick little parcels here and there, but I think this captures the vast majority. I would love to at some point in the future see the extension of with Gallison Hill and out towards Terrace. I understand why that's hard to capture currently. So I think that should be open for future discussion.
Aaron, if I may at some point.
Sure, Alan, go ahead.
I was just going to try to add one more piece as well. When you look back up to Crestview, Mike, if you please could, the Growth Center as well, under Act 47, is well within the half mile. So everything that we've asked, again, that boundary line, that is a previous Act 250 line. Part of its property, and part of it is previous permit. And so I was just going to say that's another thing you could add in your argument, that everything that we've requested is within the half mile. That enables CCR to actually do what they're doing right now, because Sabins already is in the Growth Center. So I didn't go beyond that, and of course we respect the class to that. Yeah, thanks. I think you've done a great job, everybody. Thank you. And just I wanted to speak a little on some of the other parcels too. Some of these ones, like number 8, where it really is across the way, I'm so glad you're going to put those in. Some of the inconsistencies, like number 7, it really does give us a chance. And as I think as somebody else had pointed out, The elevations aren't always that accurate, and you really do a real service by giving the person to come forward like you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Al. So again, I just want to bring it back to if there's I'm just very mindful of timing. I would like to give any other stakeholders a chance to weigh in on this very quickly, but I guess I'm mindful of the time constraints we're under.
I'm very happy to send along a digital version of this map to the housing committee and a link to this discussion. And see if they have any very strong opinions that I don't know.
Yeah,
Well-
I guess if there's any sort of like barn burner.
I really honestly,
That we'd like to know it, but short of that.
I
yeah.
really honestly don't think so.
Okay, I just want to give them a chance to.
Understood,
do
and I
that
think that's,
and
I think that's very
yeah,
fair.
I don't want, I'm not looking for something to upset the apple cart at this point. But,
Yeah.
it's just a process issue. So, if everyone here is comfortable with that, I guess, Tim, would you mind forwarding a copy of the map, the memo, and just sort of a brief synopsis of this and just get their sense of if there's something very pressing
Yes.
and I just would ask that, you just make sure to impress upon them that time is of the essence, and we would rather not make any real material changes to this if we can.
Yep, I will,
Because that's gonna create a whole bunch of
course.
process issues for us as well.
I will send it along to Alyssa and Sandy and
Okay. Does that sound reasonable and agreeable to folks?
Yeah, what's the time frame? What's the deadline we're giving them for?
Well, if comments are due then August 7th, I mean, ideally, I think by the end of this week.
Yeah.
would be-
I can send it this evening and I'll say end of this week.
Yeah.
Does that work for you, Mike?
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, do we want to just authorize the chair to sign off on, because we'll make some edits to this, because I'll work with Nick next week when he gets back, because he's very familiar with the methodology to make sure we've dotted all our i's and crossed all our t's to make sure we've got the best argument we can in there. Because he may go through and say, oh, you're missing the fact that this is also X and it's also X, and we want to make sure we've got those in there.
Yeah.
And so if you want to authorize the chair, because we can't send it back to everybody to approve, but we can authorize either Tim or Aaron to be the person I'll send the final draft to, and he can sign off on it on behalf of the planning commission.
I'm comfortable with that.
What's that?
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. I guess this probably requires a motion.
I make a motion that any iterations of this CVRCP's future land use map memo just be directed towards the chair of the planning commission to make those, to approve those final changes.
I second.
Great. Any discussion? All those in favor of, I guess, empowering me to make any final changes and signing off on the memo? That's a fair paraphrasing of of your motion. Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? It's approved. Thanks. Very quickly, Mike, this is a little bit of an aside, but there's a couple of like very minor line item nits that I probably want to take a stab at. making
Yep.
it some-
Yeah, I wrote
So
this
why-
all as one mind dump.
Yeah,
and
no,
I kind of knew it was
yeah,
gonna.
very, very good. It's just they're very small nits that are sort of coming out of it. So, but nothing material. And to the extent that I will say this, if there is anything that would, any edits that I would have that would change anything materially, I would circulate that to folks.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of materially know what we're asking for. Now we just need to get it
Yeah. I don't.
tweaked up.
Yeah,
and-
yeah, again, I don't expect any material changes to the substance of it.
All right.
Great. Thanks again, Mike. That's really helpful. And I would just say that again, I want to say thank you to you, Tim, as well. You've been an invaluable kind of conduit of communication between the housing subcommittee and Mike and the planning commission. And I think it's we're in a very good spot to be able to forward, substantive comments to the blurb and to the Regional Planning Commission, and do so with a lot of confidence, knowing that a lot of really smart and dedicated people have taken a lot of time to look at these issues. So thank you again.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And the timing couldn't have been better to connect with the Housing Committee. I think this was a perfect issue to work collaboratively on.
Great. On my agenda here. Any other comments on this agenda item before we move on? Hearing none, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the continuation of review and discussion of potential zoning regulation changes. A, map changes, and B, unified development regulations. We'll start with the map changes. There's a link to the map in the agenda for folks to look at, and again, I will turn it over to Mike. I need to
All right, so I will do a quick update to get people, if people haven't been paying attention, get them up to speed a little bit. So Nick put together these quick side-by-sides, which will make you dizzy. So we're going to switch over to one pretty quickly. But I just wanted to say, if you do get to the link and want to use the link, what this allows you to do is to zoom in. When you zoom in on one, it zooms you in the other. So you can look at, you can open the legend and look at the color and realize that's Urban Center 1 is this light purple. So here's the light purple for the June 22nd draft, and our current zoning, that's Urban Center 1. So we have a little Urban Center 1 and a much bigger Urban Center 1. And then Urban Center 2 is up here. Only because Urban Center 3 has gone away, Urban Center 2 went away, so 3 became 2. So that's why the color shifted and moved. But in any event, this just lets you be able to move around and you can see what the colors are. And if you need to know what it is, you can look at there and go and say, yellow, high density residential. So this is high density residential over here, and over here, that means it is residential 3000. So you can look at an area and see how the zoning is proposed to be changed. Now, what I'm going to do now is just turn off or expand this one. So that way we're only looking at what we have started to put together as a proposed map.
How did you just do that, Mike?
It's got little arrows on the left, expand and contract the map.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
So yes, it wasn't on all versions, and I asked Nick to make sure it's on all versions because this very quickly dizzies people and they get they don't like it. So, but we can always go back to see what the current zoning is. Just let me know. So what we've done, and I'll open this on this side.
Here.
Oh, there, I guess I can adjust the lens here.
Does everyone else have it working? It's just me.
Yeah, sometimes I have to refresh it like once or twice, and,
okay.
and it'll come up.
So, what we had talked about earlier, we'd made a number of decisions, and one of them was that we wanted to go and see places, starting with National Life, because that's where we started last time. We talked about National Life area and the area in the floodplain that we had just talked about, the school, Department of Labor, Green Mountain Power, and the liquor building. That used to be the gateway, and this used to be that used to be Western Gateway, and this used to be an office district. And what we've decided to do is to call it mixed use residential 2 for all of these areas, in hopes that we would start to be able to conceive of this area going forward into the future as an area where potentially maybe National Life expands into a little bit more of a village. We don't expect that they are. But we have no idea what could be the potential up here going forward. The state lease runs out in 8 years. What happens after that? I mean, we just don't know. And it would be a good opportunity. There's a lot of land up here where we could have more high density residential housing, and really make this more of a village setting as opposed to strictly an office park, which is the way it was envisioned when this zoning district was created. So we had talked about making this adjustment. The dark brown here is mixed use residential 1. Let me try to remember. Is that mixed use 1? Yes, so that's mixed use 1, which is mixed use residential, but the buildings are smaller, of a smaller scale. So these are more neighborhood type mixed use residential as opposed to what we have up here with the National Life. And you'll also see this brown continue through Stonecutters Way. This new mixed use residential 2 goes up and includes pieces of Saban's Pasture and out down Route 302. So the idea was we wanted to give a new zoning district that's not talking about this area as a gateway, but more talking about it from a standpoint of mixed use residential with allowing bigger buildings in the light brown and mixed use residential in dark brown as in smaller buildings. So what's the maximum footprint size you'd have for this building? So those were a little bit of some of the differences. I don't think this has changed much on Route 12. We did expand. The other thing we changed, again, speaking more to the public, we currently have residential 1,500, 3,000, 6,000, and 9,000. And the plan is to collapse these down into high density and medium density residential. We still will get to the urban residential, but because we've collapsed these, this used to be 2 separate zoning districts out here on Northfield Street, one being res 6,000, one being res 9,000. They're now all just medium density residential. And that expands out a little bit out Hill Street and out Berlin Street, and includes large areas of Sherwood, Isabel Circle, Hebert, Wheelock. All those areas are all medium density residential areas. That's what some of the decisions we've already made. I think, let's see. Yep, we've got Gallison Hill is in its medium. That was industrial. That's a new zoning district. And then we still had a gateway out here. The gateway's really just looking at East Montpelier Road heading up to the roundabout. And that's all that's left of our gateway district. We just want to make sure people coming into town, we've got keeping that gateway look going. We talked about leaving Country Club Road as it is for now. We have a competitive process going on. And so we decided to leave those areas zoned as they currently exist, and we can make amendments later on if the development proposal requires it. Zoom out a touch. Rural is any area that does not have sewer and water. So these areas that you see designated in green, whether it's Hill Street or Town Hill, these are areas without sewer and water, and therefore they're designated as rural because you have to have on-site sewer, on-site water. Generally, that means you need a parcel of at least 2 acres in size. That's why the minimum lot size is 2 acres, because to have the separation distances for a well shield and the septic fields and a backup septic field, you need to have 2 septic fields, and you need to have room for the well and the well shield, and then you have to build the house and all the things. So usually that takes about 2 acres. So that's why these areas are just simply zoned differently. And I think this is just about where we stopped making decisions. And then it came back to me to go through and say, Mike, take what we've learned on this half of the town and apply it to the other half of the town. So I went through, we kept these, we merged the 1,500 and 3,000 to have a high density residential. We have mixed use residential. I'll zoom in a touch. This is already pretty much our mixed use residential district here, so that hasn't changed. Court Street, that is after the one building on the corner, which is a large downtown building. The rest of the smaller buildings are all the ones that are in mixed use residential 1. This also is mixed use residential already, so nothing has changed here. There's no recommended changes. All the residential units through here, it's just a matter of merging those other two, merging 6 and 9 together. And then we get up areas like North Street, which lose sewer and water at a certain point. And that's Main Street losing its water and sewer as it gets up past a certain point. Elm Street gets out almost to, that's the stump dump in gray. So all this area out here is all rural. I didn't make any changes there. So where we did make some changes, where I did add some stuff in, because there was the conversation, the agreement you wanted, and I guess I should have pointed that out. This while Northfield Street and these other ones did not change. So Northfield Street, East State Street, out past the meadow, these are all areas that already were in mixed use residential. But Berlin Street out to almost Hebert is now proposed to be mixed use at the smaller scale, as well as some buildings down here. So there's a little bit of adjustment. These are new. So because we made these new, I added in this extension out on Terrace Street to be similar to those other ones. And mixed use goes out to the cemetery. So I think those are some of the bigger changes that we had. So I did, basically what I'm trying to say is I tried to take what I'd already learned from the other ones and put them on here. Whether they're good ideas or not, I just tried to give you something so we can expedite this process. We want to be able to get through our zoning approval process sometime. And so if we get something on a map, we can all start saying, this is starting to get close to what we think is what we want. Then we can start having some public input, and maybe we get pushback on the Terrace Street mixed use district or the Berlin Street mixed use district, or maybe people prefer the old riverfront zoning covering everything, because what used to be riverfront is now on Berry Street Urban Center 1. On Stonecutters Way has been shifted to mixed use residential 2. And a number of other little changes like that. So, and I guess I'll leave it at that and start to decide whether you want to have additional changes, you like what you see.
So I would like to see more yellow. Especially like I think that entire neighborhood from downtown to College Street should be yellow.
So we're talking, we've got a Marvin Street and a Liberty
Yep.
Street.
Yep. Then all the way to Main Street too. I mean, these neighborhoods look very similar. And then this, I would say the same thing over towards Terrace Street. Needs more yellow because it is also just like 1/4 acre households. So it seems like a very similar land use to the other side of the city. And then also the areas that kind of bracket the State House. And this goes back to my idea of like that land use should have like a dense core, a less dense, and then like the density kind of like bullseyes out from there. So I would like to see yellow as like the buffer between this olivey green, and the downtown.
So a few of these I would note are because of topography, Cliff Street,
Right.
Horse Street, and up above this section of Terrace Street. These are some pretty.
It would seem
Good.
to make sense that you go from the brown to the yellow before you go to the green.
Yeah, just pointing out there were a couple areas like Cliff Street that defy that. On a flat map, it looks like it should be yellow, but on a
I do think
on
Cliff
a
Street
walk,
quite urban though. Like walking it, it's quite
Yeah.
urban, you know.
yeah.
I
But
think
to
it
go
is-
to go to 30 units an acre would be
that's
on
what the
Cliff
yellow
Street.
is.
It is, let's see, yellow is 1 unit per 1,500, which is 27 units an acre.
But we could also shift that as well, couldn't we?
Yeah, this is so green. Your greenish color is 14 units an acre, and your yellows are 27 units an acre. So, that's
Yeah, I mean,
it's hard to visualize that.
Your point on the topography on both sides of the state-owned, well, like the parkland behind the Capitol complex, on both sides of that, the Cliff Street side, and then to the east, that's also really steep.
But they are packed in there.
They're packed in, but I feel like it's built out.
You know, another spot.
I'm just trying to think about how much time we spent on the steep
Right.
slopes.
Steep slopes. I
I
know.
don't want to revisit that.
I bring up steep slopes with like the commoners so many times. I'm like, you know, steep slopes.
The other spot, you know, particularly, we know like the Peter Kellman story of the state will eventually figure out what buildings they need and they'll start liquidating buildings. And so his inability to, you know, because of parking requirements, I know he could have gotten an exception or something like that, but you know, we want to make it easier for people like that to be able to subdivide and, you know, build condos or whatever, larger buildings. And there's a bunch of those. To me that, you know, it's, if we zoom into, Baldwin Street, Mike, if you just zoom into that for a second. Again, to the south, I mean, those are big, huge buildings, but on the north side of that, those are things that have been liquidated. There's been a couple sold already. There's been a couple others that are proposed. And then really from Bailey up to that sort of connecting spot, I mean, to me, that's just downtown, right? And we just get into, if we make it downtown, we don't have to have huge debates about the parking. We already know parking is exempt in the downtown. So to me, that's all like, if you go walking through there, it's just part of the downtown. We haven't thought too much about it because it's been state owned. But again, they're starting to liquidate a bunch of things there. And then with that same logic, you start getting, well, what about the north side of Port Street? Shouldn't it be similar, right? I mean, but particularly that Baldwin, just because I know a bunch of those buildings are probably going to get turned over here in the next couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess what I would say is some of this has to do with just scale of buildings. We could certainly look at like this is expecting, the light brown is expecting bigger buildings. Dark brown is mixed use with smaller buildings. This purpley color though is the area that allows up to 6 stories. So no parking requirement. It's really the urban, you can build right up to the property lines, 0 lot lines.
Right, you get some little tiny
Yeah.
houses on Port Street that are downtown. I mean, they're tiny, right there at the end, right? It's like, well, yeah, maybe someday somebody buys 3 or 4 of those lots and puts in something. I mean, I don't know what they'll do. Maybe they'll
Yep.
always be small ones, but that's currently downtown. And we know for, I mean, it's almost certain that a bunch of those state buildings are turnover.
Yeah, and I was just pointing out that's, you know, sometimes like, well, shouldn't that be downtown? In the same way that we just had a conversation about Redstone, you know, shouldn't Redstone be in the downtown? Well, from a zoning standpoint, it hasn't been, but we aren't talking about zoning, calling that zoning district downtown. It's urban center 1, and this property just doesn't meet the characteristics of an urban center 1, but it is in our quote downtown area. It is in the historic district. But we really wouldn't expect that the character of buildings that you see outside our windows to be in this area. So but that may make sense. We wouldn't want to have necessarily spot zoning, but we could consider what we had here for our urban or our mixed use residential 2 larger buildings. Maybe that's more appropriate in here, that we're expecting bigger buildings, and that could include the Redstone building, which is a bigger building, And if something happened to some of these, that they would be replaced with potentially bigger buildings. As opposed to this dark brown, which is really your neighborhood mixed-use residential scale. So it could increase the scale by making it light brown. Just as some other options, but I've heard comments. Here's what I'm going to do for my notes, though. We'll have to have some seconds and motions or something at some point, because otherwise, I don't know if Maria's comments are held by everybody or if they're just, or Gabe's comments or.
Are there other thoughts about that particular area where the state buildings are currently?
Yeah, I mean, I take what both of you are saying about those areas. I mean, I sort of see it as, and I'm gonna, not National Life, it's the other insurance building that's below, like on State Street,
Oh,
next to 133, right out of the corner there. I could envision a future where behind that building, up on Baldwin Street, assuming you could engineer it, like there could be buildings similar to that scale. Or, you know, the state could, whether it be the state or somebody like that, just says like, we can build something the larger scale there. And I think that given the proximity to those buildings on State Street, 133, the other insurance building, that's not gonna be crazy out of scale. And I keep being mindful of, Tim, you're probably the loudest for this, is just like, we need to stop thinking about what's there, and we need to constantly think like, what can we do moving forward? And
It's out of the flood zone.
yeah,
It's walkable to everything.
exactly, and that's
right.
right, and that's it. And I don't.
And there's sidewalks.
Yeah,
there's everything.
the only thing that gives me sort of heartburn around both those areas is just the topography is something that's real, and I'm not an engineer, so I don't know how to speak to those issues, but I'm in favor of.
I'm the same on Maria's comments. I just think that the brown to yellow, you know, whatever that looks like. I don't know that do you want to go through like, and you draw something, or had you
Well-
already drawn something in your previous map?
Actually, I
think
think I
just
pulled some of these
clean it out.
from your previous map. That's
Yeah.
where this one came in,
Right.
Yeah.
was from your previous map, because I think I just kind of merged them together to make one map.
I think my map said I wanted the downtown to kind of expand by one block in every direction. And I think that would have included that section of Baldwin Street. So I am also for this Baldwin Street and Court Street. I think they're already not really that residential anymore. It seems like the area has changed, and it makes sense to incorporate it as part of the downtown. It's only a block and a half from the like core commercial district, you know.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, Mike, to ask, you just explained this, but I'll ask you again. What is the designation now under this map of the National Life parcel, like that area? What is that? Is
National Life is mixed use residential 2,
okay.
which is really, we already have a mixed use residential in our zoning, but it's really scaled at a neighborhood scale. So think Elm Street, North Branch Cafe, out that direction. That's
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's maybe a more appropriate zoning designation for the Baldwin Street and Court Street areas, as opposed to. I'm sorry, I just want to get the terminology. And the yellow is
the yellow is high density residential, which has the same residential density. So this is 1 unit per 1,500 in yellow. This dark brown is 1 unit per 1,500, but also allows commercial.
I'm just really trying to get around parking stuff. Like if we end up proposing some parking regulation that nobody else
Right.
wants, it's already downtown, you know, urban center or whatever we call that, right? Is already.
Well, I
Somebody
think-
wants to be creative and
So
think
you-
about what they can do with those parcels, like.
Yeah.
That doesn't have to be the consideration.
so you're really advocating for this to be pulled into the downtown.
I
as
I
opposed
am,
to-
just because of Peter Kelman's story,
Yep,
like
yep.
you know, he went and invested in
Right.
Barry instead of investing in Montpelier.
What I would say is what we're looking at here is really think of the last meeting we had. We had those guys come in for route, and they were talking about bulk and massing and scale. Think about that for these things here? What would we expect from a building block bulk amassing? We can always go to the parking standards and go through and say, oh, by the way, everything that's in high density residential, mixed use residential 1, and the downtown urban 1 and urban 2, those districts don't have any parking requirements. We can always change the parking requirement later. As opposed to trying to roll that in and saying, we expect Court Street to have 6-story buildings on it.
But it could,
I know, I think it could.
but it could, right? Like,
Okay, well, I mean,
you
this
think of
is,
you think of
Here's
like-
one thing I'll say about Court Street. The other side of the street is urban. And if somebody builds a building on it, it's going to have potentially urban massing. Why would you have the other side of the street not be able to do that?
Yeah, I know the auction's still going on, right? But the federal building, like, you know, everybody that's talking about the federal building is talking about something residential behind, which probably will be, you know, some parking and then, you know, like as many stories as they get above that. So whatever people think they're looking at now, I mean, they're those people on Court Street, those people on Baldwin, I mean, they're downtown. We can act like it's not downtown, but I mean, they're downtown. I don't know how
Alright,
you
well-
could be any less, I mean, you're like 2 feet from the Capitol. Like, how could you be any less downtown than those 2 little spots?
all right, so let's straw poll Court Street. What do we, do we want it, the discussion is to kind of move that into the purple to make it urban 1.
Yes.
I'm a
Do
yes.
we have to make a motion, the whole thing?
Well, I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to.
Well, I figure we'll put them all together and make a vote at the end, but I figure if we just go, if we've got 4 votes to put it into urban center 1, then we just put it on the yes list and we can move on to Baldwin Street.
Let's work it the other way. Let's start with this. Let's take a quick straw poll. Those that would let's focus on Court Street. There are folks here that think that as it is on the map zoned right now, that is appropriate. Okay, great. So the next would be, so I think the next 2 options would be bring it into urban 1 or what would be the other?
Mixed use 2.
Mixed use 2, okay. So those would be in favor. Anybody here think that urban 1 is appropriate?
I do.
I think it's appropriate.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, so that's.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the majority, right?
Okay. So Court Street to urban center 1. The next one that was discussed,
The Baldwin Street area.
there's the Baldwin Street. If we're sticking with the Brown request, we also had discussions of whether Cliff Street should be.
So same question. Anybody here think that should stay?
Which one, Baldwin?
This is the Baldwin Street. This,
Wait, are we
I
on-
would guess it's Baldwin up to Bailey,
Bailey.
up to Bailey.
Yeah, and really it's the other side of Bailey too, right? I mean, it's like you got one half of it's the city and one half of it's not. I mean, I would say that whole Bailey to Baldwin is kind of what I'm talking about on either side of the street.
All the way up to Redstone.
I would probably put into Redstone if you're going that far.
I think that gives a lot of opportunity.
All right, well, assuming that, right, so what's under consideration now is, let's say, Redstone, down Terrace, south of Terrace, and then along the properties, the border, not
Bailey and Baldwin.
Bailey, I'm sorry, Bailey, and then I'll call it the Baldwin Street block. That's what we're looking at.
Yep.
There are folks that think that that should stay as is. No, so then we've got urban 1,
Yeah,
residential mix 2,
urban one.
or other than think the urban 1.
Yes.
Sorry, before, I'm just trying to figure out if we change this, does this impact at all what the arguments that we're making for Redstone?
No, it actually, well, I would argue that it aligns.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, and we won't have these adopted in time.
Alan Goldman has his hand up, by the way, and we're talking about his properties now, so.
Oh, yeah, fair enough. Alan,
Thank you. Actually, I wasn't going to talk about mine, but thank you. I was just going to suggest too, on State Street, on the corner of State and Bailey, there's those three properties that are very, very similar, and you may want to consider those as well.
Which corner of the one
If you're looking to the west side of Bailey,
northwest?
yes, you may want to consider those three parcels there because they're very similar to what you're describing.
Oh, it is true. They are.
They're
Yeah.
three.
Yeah, I don't know
I
about the
believe
other two. If we did,
commercial.
we'd probably
Yeah, I think
collect
they're
all
like
five
office
of them.
spaces,
Maybe.
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay. It's true. Okay, so,
Good point.
Urban one?
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Four. That's I see four. At least four votes. Okay.
John, Ron?
I would be happy with mixed use too in that area. But if others want to go urban one, I'm not going to belabor it.
Can I ask why you think mixed two is more appropriate?
That area of Baldwin just does not, and I am somebody who also is like very much of a let's focus on the future and not what's currently there. But I do wonder if like once you start getting up terrace, which is like much more residential and has houses, whether people and no semblance of an office building at the moment, as opposed to down on lower on Baldwin, where yeah, right behind some of those houses on Baldwin is Union Mutual, technically, and the state office buildings. But as you go up terrace, there is nothing like that yet.
Thanks. I'm for what it's worth, I'm also in favor of moving into urban one. Are there any other areas that we might want to take a look at? Right, as we
Are we talking specifically about urban one, or are we talking about other general changes?
I was thinking the latter, but
Yeah.
if there's
I-
if we're focused on the downtown core, we can start there and move out.
What do people think, since we're over in the Terrace Street neighborhood, what do you guys think of making that yellow instead of olive? The closer in houses, maybe like Dairy Lane inward.
I think that makes a lot of sense to me. If you consider Dairy Lane, Clarendon, Pinewood area, the topography is not an issue at that point. And they are smaller parcels. It would give an opportunity, I think, for, I'm looking at Clarendon Avenue specifically, for some potential infill development, maybe subdivision, but definitely infill development for multi-unit housing.
And what parts of Clarendon?
Well, it would be redevelopment. I'm thinking
Right.
The-
That's
So like Clarendon
what
up to
section of the-
Dairy Lane and then
All the way up.
Pinewood as well.
I was specifically looking at Clarendon up to Dairy as was mentioned.
Yeah.
What about Pinewood? I mean, Sean, you're over there. Is that an impact if that was a little higher density?
Oh, Pinewood's a.
I think it's fine to put it on there. It's going to require, you can add these zones of higher density, and it's going to require somebody selling their lot and to somebody who wants to redevelop it at a higher density, right? These are going to be long-term changes. I think that it makes sense to zone that for a higher density now.
I will say, like, if you guys are following this, like the homes, like what is the program? It's ACZ's program to try to get more development. It's like incremental, small scale development. And working on this crazy project at Isabel Circle, I would just tell you, like, that's 5 years of my life invested. You know, building a triplex was way easier, converting existing space was way easier. Like the fastest way that we, you know, if somebody takes something and turns it into a duplex or a triplex or puts a, you know, subdivides their lot and does something with it, it's the quickest way we get housing, like
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and that's, to your point, Tim, that's why I was sort of asking what section of Clarendon you were thinking about, because I can see converting some of those like larger Victorians and sort of, I'll call them
Sure.
of Clarendon, that sort of goes up to like basically over that.
Yeah, yeah.
Drive,
Yeah.
but past there to Dairy Lane, I'm not quite sure I see a lot of subdivision.
Well, that's,
Be
we got
possible.
green's pretty good too, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yellow along Clarendon and Pinewood, right? Is that what we're thinking? Aaron, does that seem right?
And then what do you guys think about the Terrace Street mixed use residential? My thought process was mixed use would be on the arterials. And like Terrace Street is, I mean, I wouldn't consider it an arterial because it isn't, people don't, well, I guess some people do take it to go elsewhere, but not the way that you take, you know, River Street or Berlin Street to go to different towns. No, but you're not heading, I mean,
Right.
you're not going to another town via Terrace Street usually.
There's
So-
not a lot of people driving to Middlesex from.
Right. But they are driving on Route 2 or Berlin Street or Northfield, you know, all these other streets are more like an actual arterial than,
Where do the mixed use?
Terrace.
We've been thinking about this, like the coffee shop. These are small.
no, I think it's like offices, right? Mixed use residential. One is like, it's like my neighborhood. You can have like a law office or like a chiropractic office. You know,
Yeah,
these like
yeah,
home
your
offices.
existing. let me-
It's not even coffee shops, I don't think.
You can have a coffee shop.
Yeah, so
You want a coffee
here-
shop?
here is-
You can have a coffee shop.
Here is our brown, the brown areas. This is our existing zoning map. I switched over to the existing zoning. So you've got over here by the meadow, you've got areas, so you can have some churches, you can have some, other uses, Court Street, which has, lawyers and lobbyists and folks that are up there along with residential. East State Street out to the college. That's all, including the college, is all mixed use residential. You can have both those uses and residential. Northfield Street has one.
So we're basically saying like East State Street, like Elm Street.
Yeah, so when you start thinking about, all right, what would that be like on Terrace Street? That's kind of what we're thinking of. These types of uses that you see here are uses that you can see there. In some cases, I don't think, like Northfield Street has the Econo Lodge. Do I think somebody's gonna plunk an Econo Lodge out on Terrace Street? No, I don't. But somebody could come up with you know, some of these other bakeries or coffee shops or something else that's at a much smaller scale, or hairdresser or lawyer's office or something like that. That would allow those types of small scale conversions that currently would only be allowed right now. If you wanted to be a lawyer, you would have to own the house and make it your home occupation. You could do it, but you know, I couldn't go and buy a house on Terrace Street and turn it into a planning office and decide I'm going to run my own planning consulting firm off Terrace Street. That wouldn't be allowed. And this is current. I'll go back to proposed, just so that way we're back to where we were. So that's what this would mean in this area.
I mean, I could envision, I mean, to be honest, I could envision some of that occurring from, say, Crestview down the hill, but sort of Crestview above the hill, going up that hill, I just can't envision any of that. So I think that the sort of past Jordan Street and Crestview Drive.
I think keeping that maybe switching it from mixed use to our yellow residential, our higher density residential beyond Crestview and Jordan is a good idea.
Yeah, I'm fine with scaling back that mixed use residential one.
We should take more site visits.
Field
We
trip.
really just drive around town. 15 passenger van.
Okay, so I support that proposal. I know we only
Me
have a
too.
few minutes left, so. If
Alright,
we want
so-
to make some clear direction.
Stop MUR1 at Jordan and switch to high res, so
Yes.
become yellow.
Yep.
Okay.
And to that point, we do have 5 minutes left, so there's probably not enough time to dive into another section of the map.
What I mentioned about the College Hill.
Oh,
I-
all right.
I think that's good to revisit for 5 minutes because I completely agree with Maria in that space.
Sorry, Maria, I wasn't trying to distract you.
No, I'm like, I, you know, guys, I do see this as like a social justice issue.
Yep.
That like the fancy houses on College Street and Liberty Street are kept in a lower density area, even though they are even closer to downtown than much of Berry Street, you know?
I agree.
So I think in the old map, so this, are you guys looking at is anyone looking at the old map? There's like a light olive. I think that should all be yellow.
I agree with that.
So everything that is, this is the current zoning map.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to the north as well.
Oh, and to the north, so everything out McKinley Street, all of this that is or is. This is residential 6,000, so this is,
But we're also going to be playing with the
We're-
res configurations too, right?
Yeah.
Right.
yes.
So it's not necessarily that it'll be imprinted
Yep.
onto
So-
these districts.
Yeah, so-
That we're just saying that this area is akin to the houses on, say, Loomis.
This is res 6, and I can switch over, and we would make that area, carve that area out of this large green. So what basically happened was we merged res 9, which is your town hill, with res 6 to create this map.
Right.
Res 6 being College Street and Marvin and Liberty. And what you're doing is simply saying, well, no, that res 6 should not have been merged with res 9. The res 6 should have been merged with the high density.
Or remember, I was calling it medium density.
Well, we can change names after. On
Yes,
this
I
map,
think
it's high and medium.
I think your analysis is correct, though, Mike. I think that was
And I agree with that as well.
Merge current res 6 college to high res.
So what if I did a motion to have Mike update the maps to include the things that we just discussed?
Perfect.
If that's the motion, then I will
That's the
second that.
So both.
Excellent.
All those in favor of making those,
Who was our second?
Oh,
I was.
Tim was second.
Tim was
Okay.
second. All those in favor of making those four changes? Is that what-
5. I got 5.
Five?
Yeah.
Can we just
not
type, name them off real quick, just so.
Court Street to Urban Center 1, Baldwin to Redstone and State to Urban Center 1, Clarendon to Derry and Pinewood would be high res. Stop MUR1 at Jordan, switch to high res. Merge current res 6 college to high res.
Yes.
Perfect. All those in favor of making those changes, say aye.
Hi.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Great. Motion
So
passes. Thank you,
looks
everybody.
like Alan has his hand up.
Alan, if you have something to say, please do, but please make it brief.
Oh, it's very short. I'll make it very short. Terrace Street is a conflict collector class 2, and it used to be called Middlesex Street. It's zoned for about 7,500 trips a day, and it has about 3,400 right now. Thank you so much.
Which street? I missed that.
Terrace.
Terrace.
Okay.
Terrace, and it's all one of our old master plans that's on the cover that used to be called Middlesex Street. Thank you, folks, for all your great work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Very quickly before we go, I just wanted to ask, it seems like there's a handful of folks that are not going to be able to make the August 10th meeting. Is there, I think if those that aren't going to come don't come, we would still have a quorum, but it'd be very close. Is there a appetite amongst the group to just not have the August 10th meeting? Understanding that there are also some folks that won't be able to go to the second meeting in August. And I probably will be one of those people who won't be there at the second meeting. There's an outside chance that we don't have any meetings in August. But
Did I say that I can't make the August 10th meeting? That one is the one I might miss.
I don't remember you telling me that, but if you are not able to come to the 10th, we will not have a quorum, I don't think. So I think just to be safe, let's cancel the August 10th meeting. I will send out some emails to make sure to see whether or not we can hold the
24th.
meeting. All right.
Great.
Okay. So
Enjoy your summer vacation.
yeah. So I will
Get the
send,
whole
I will
month
send
off.
out some emails, schedule this remainder stuff. Tim. Sorry.
It's running out.
Tim is adjourned.
I move to adjourn. Yeah. We need to adjourn, looking for a motion.
I thought Tim did that.
Hmm?
No, I move.
So moved. Second.
On second.
Tim second there.
All those in favor of leaving.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you, everybody.
Good month.
Will you see me on which? Yeah. Yeah.